on growing Dixie Lee Bakery, expanding his Red Horse brand, and leading ventures such as the Fox and the Falcon and the Park Avenue Kitchen. Chef Burke and his team have operated or orchestrated the culinary components of 2 restaurants throughout the United States in such areas as New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Florida, Rhode Island, and now internationally in Saudi Arabia. Chef Burke's numerous honors include the Robert Mondavi Award of Excellence, Japan's Nippon Award, and recognition from the James Beard Foundation, where he was twice nominated for Best Chef. With an honorary doctorate from Johnson & Wales University, he continues to shape the culinary landscape with his signature creativity and business acumen. I'm pleased and honored to introduce Chef David Burke, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for coming. We're going to take you through a little fish today. So I'll tell you that I started, well, this school was founded in 75, right? That's when I decided to be a chef. I was in 1976. I decided I wanted to be in the kitchen. And in 76, being in the kitchen was really not so cool as it is today, because it wasn't a profession. It wasn't recognized as a profession, being a chef, until I think 76, 77. It was more of a service job, like a janitor or maid, a utility guy. You wore mostly in hotels and resorts. To be honest with you, it wasn't the same as it is today. So, congrats on 50 years of what has happened. Based on the CIA, other cooking schools, this school, Food Network, and the people that have traveled around the world that want a higher level of eating, and the diversity of what we cook. And when I started, in order to get credibility for a chef, you had to work in a French restaurant. Or a really good Italian. There was no great American restaurants. You had the River Café. You had Four Seasons, 21 Club, and then you had a couple of good Italian restaurants, and mainly you had French restaurants. Everybody wanted to be a saucier, and the culinary schools taught mostly French food, European food, and that's what we learned. So when I explained how we're going to do tuna tartare, I put on a menu in 1986 or 87 at the River Cafe, and that was a big deal. You think about tuna tartare now, it's not, right? People didn't eat raw fish. Ceviche was the only real raw fish. There's no raw fish in French cuisine. Crudo really wasn't around. Sushi wasn't even that popular in the 70s. If you think about it, Mexican food was not really around. You went to a Mexican restaurant in a Mexican neighborhood. Now you see what has happened between sushi's on steakhouse menus, tacos are on fine dining menus. Right, so you get all that stuff that just bubbles up into what we call modern American cuisine. So for me to put the tartare, the tuna and salmon tartare, some people think I created tuna tartare. I don't think so, because I think it's, how could that be, right? But there are articles about that. So in my first review in '88 in the New York Times, we had a great tuna tartare, and I'll tell you why we made it. More importantly, as to how we made it. I'll show you how we made it, but why we made it. We made it because we don't want to throw things away. Most tartares, steak tartare. Does anyone know what steak tartare is? Anybody know what's in it? Nobody knows what's in steak tartare. You know what's in steak tartare? But what are the spices? Worcestershire, pickles, right? All of the horseradish, all these strong flavors, right? So when you have a raw piece of meat or fish, why would you want to hide the flavor of the meat? Yes. And if you think about steak tartare way back when, there was no refrigerators. So some people say steak tartare came from horse meat, and it was made at bars. It was made at bars, right? Because the bars didn't have a chef. What else is what else was made in bars? New York City was full of oysters. These rivers, oysters this big. People lived on oysters. 3 oysters was dinner. And what did they put on oysters? Horseradish. tomato sauce, things that you can get from a can that you didn't need. Prepared food. What did they put in the Bloody Mary? And tomato, right? Things from a can. Why? What's the best thing for a bad liver? From a drunken liver? Horseradish. So everything kind of makes sense, right? So and it was easy to make that because you didn't need a chef or a kitchen. And back in New York 100 years ago or so, there was tons of taverns, probably not a lot of great chefs. So the barkeeper could make those things easily out of condiments. And think about the lack of refrigeration. When people talk about why older people eat well-done steak, well, they probably had a sibling or they had themselves sick quite a bit when they were kids because not only a lack of refrigeration in your house, supermarkets, transportation. So stuff like that was made. Things were made from preserves. And every country has a preserved meat, whether it's gravlax, confit, right, salt cod. Every country had a salted product to get them through the winters. In fact, salt, this is salt. We'll get to that. I have a U.S. patent on preserving meat with salt. This is salt. The word salary comes from salt. So if you had salt, you had money. That's where salary comes from. So tuna. So when I worked at the River Cafe. Before I worked at the River Cafe, I got a job in Norway. And that's when Norway was like Ireland, not known for their food, right? Scandinavian food, Irish food. You don't read about great Irish cuisine, right? Or Scandinavian. Now you do because of Denmark and the internet. So we used to make something called gravlax all the time. And gravlax translates to grav. What is grav? Spell it. Grave, right? Lox is salmon, so it's buried salmon. That's all it is cured and buried salmon. The Vikings used to bury the salmon in the dirt, and that was their food for the wintertime. And everybody has smoked salmon. So I created pastrami salmon when I got to the River Cafe, and I'll show you why we did that. So when we got our fish in, because we need to make money, we need to use the whole product, right? So when you bone out a fish or skin it, I'm gonna do the best I can with. You take this down. Okay, so that's the fish. Now this we would use too. We'll find a way to use this, and I might if I have time. We'll make that crispy into a salmon cracker, a skin cracker, and we'll put some of the trim. We'll make a mousse, and we'll make like an Oreo out of the skin and the mousse. But now you're down to the fish part. This piece here, the belly, good for sushi bar, good for tartare, and that's what we will be using. But here's another way of using a fish. We cut it this way. You see what I'm doing? I'm taking the belly down in what we call salmon ribbons. Now with this piece, can you see this? When I cut a main dish, I get a nice square rectangle. Now I have a beautiful piece of fish that cooks evenly. If I left the belly on, it would be low. That piece would overcook. So I have this piece here, which is gonna turn into tartare meat. And you could grind it. And this is the fatty piece. So nothing's wasted. When you get into the business, when you get out there, you'll realize food costs it's not sexy now, but it's important. If you can't make money, you can't keep a job. And these are the things that'll make you money. And you'll see, I'll try to walk you through it. It's not that's what you want to learn now. You want to learn how to make beautiful dishes to put on Instagram. I get it. So I'm going to take the salmon here, nice and rich. That's in one bowl. I'm going to step aside for a second. Here's the ribbons. This particular piece Take a little bit of herbs here. This is cilantro. We're just going to roll that up. Now you have another portion as an appetizer. Follow me? So you'd have 4 of those. So now I just got $100 more of a sale. I have a $25 appetizer. I just made $100. These 4 things, right? The tartare, I probably have 4 more appetizers. Another $100. So there's $200 that goes in the register before I even get to this. This is the price, right? These are going to be $45 each when we sell them. So this waste, most people, honestly, don't try to utilize it. So when I write a menu, if I have salmon on the menu, I have a salmon appetizer. If I have tuna on the menu, I have a tuna appetizer. At least I try. Because otherwise, what are you doing with the waste? Could be a ravioli, could be a dumpling, could be a taco, could be a tartare, right? Could be a soup. Let me get this up. Okay. All right, same thing with the tuna. Well, I'll do this quickly. Well, I won't spend as much time on the tuna. All that dark meat on the tuna, it's the same idea with the tuna. The dark meat you're going to take off. The dark meat is very fishy, and some people like it. American palate, not necessarily. This is the bloodline. It's also the muscle. This is what makes the fish wiggle, swim. I never use it. It's too rich for me. You'll see it on swordfish sometimes too. Now, then you have the belly here. And you have the skin piece. This is the prime piece again. That's the beauty piece. This is the belly again. And this is where we'll take our pieces of meat here. You've got sashimi or you got tartare. And I'll show you both. Some of the creations I've had over the years have come from byproducts. One is the swordfish chop, which we'll talk about in a moment. And now here's tuna. And then, again, in the kitchens in New York and around the country, the busy ones, there's a butcher. And that person in the morning is cutting all the fish and meat. And the best way, if you have a restaurant that's busy enough to afford it, that's what you want. Same person cuts the fish and meat. It's portioned. All the scrap is used. Everything is labeled and dated. It's not the cook. The line cook shouldn't be portioning fish and meat because there's a different line cook. There's 3 different line cooks touching the same amount of food, and they don't become an expert at it. When I teach one of my cooks how to make something, 4 months later, they're better than me. They do it every day. And I don't do it every day. So they get better and better, and they become the expert at making whatever that production might be. So I'm going to take a step away from just so. So now we got a tartare. Now, like I said, beef tartare has shallots, Worcestershire. So we're going to put shallots in both of these. I got some chives and some cilantro. But with the fish, because it's fresh, it's not rancid, I don't need to hide the flavor of it. I'm putting chili oil, a little bit of soy. And the soy, you can use white soy if you want to keep the color, but keep in mind, if you're going to make it a day ahead, the soy sauce is going to this color. The zest is important for the perfume, especially lime. And then you get a little bite from this. This is the horseradish. And these are the old molds. I don't know if they don't use them as much as we did back in the day, but I went to pastry school in Paris in the 80s. And a lot of the pastry shops, everything was in molds, uniform. You know, you go to class and they teach you petit gâteau, gelatin desserts. They use these things. And they're very good. And they look good. And the food looks nice, organized. So, again, here's the tartare. And then salt, pepper. This is a 45-year-old dish. And I still think it looks great. And I still think it looks modern. So we're going to put do it on a plate. Tuna goes down first because I think it's a little more sturdy, leaner. And we would make 60 of these during the day and sell them. The pickup is easy. Tuna and salmon tartare. It's in my first book. That book was published. It was written in the 80s, early 90s. So these mold, then you have some juice, right? You don't put acid in it, but you want acid in the sauce because the acid will cook the fish while you're waiting. This is whipped creme fraiche. So you've taken byproduct from both salmon and tuna. Normally, most chefs throw this stuff away. You're gonna unmold it simply like that. These are potato chips baked on a pipe. They're called gaufrettes or waffle chips. And dish number one from the salmon and tuna. We serve that with toast. We serve it with shrimp crackers, etc. The next dish we're going to make is pancake. We're going to take that ribbon, which is here. Got any toothpicks by any chance? Skewers? Anybody working in a restaurant now? Where? She just in theater district? Oh yeah, that's been around a long time. Thank you. So I take a stick. I'm just going to put it through this what we call pinwheel. I've got a watercress puree. This is blanched watercress. And I got pancake batter. It's probably from a box. No, it's not from a box. I can see that. Always know that, a lot of times I did a book that had leftovers in it. It's called Second Day Dishes. Pancakes are a great way to use byproduct, like bread. And you'll see that. So this is the salmon pinwheel going down. I'm going to make a pancake. So the pancake has puree watercress, basic pancake batter. The pancake batter normally doesn't have sugar. You don't want to put the sugar in. But you can do mushroom pancakes, tomato pancakes, lobster pancakes. In fact, you could use this as let me get that heated. So the pinwheel's going. I'm moving to another dish now, but this is ginger puree. It's one of our secret weapons. So we take ginger, we cut it up, we peel it, we take the peels, we make a flavored oil with. In the 80s, we started the flavor oil movement, and this is pureed. This has been boiled for 5 hours in 5 different sets of water, so that you take all that fire out of the ginger and you're just left with the perfume. And we make a paste out of it. Right? So there's the salmon. Pancake's going to go in. Pancake pan's a little hot, but I'm okay. So then you've got the, this is going to go right on the fish. And we would do this overnight to let it soak in and uncover it and let it dry. So you're putting a ginger crust. This is for another dish, but I'm going to move quick. And then we'll finish this in a minute. Salmon. Anybody use quail eggs before? They're a pain in the neck. But they're good. Watercress pancake. Beautiful. Smells good. So there's the pancake and eggs with a salmon belly. I'll leave one quail egg off. You could use two, but sometimes we'll do two small ones. We'll do the pancake, piece of ham, salmon, and we'll call it a salmon Benedict. And we use that as a brunch item. Again, you're using a product that normally wouldn't sell. Could, it would. But anyway, that's our thinking behind it. I'll keep this for a moment. I'm going to jump into one other thing before we move on to the other salmon. So this salmon dish is going to have lots of black pepper on it, like a steak of poivre. You know what a steak of poivre is? Right, we can wipe this up a little. I'll get that hot again. The salt. We use this salt for, I have a patent on dry aging meat. If you know what dry aged meat is, you dry age meat in a walk-in, one of which is the side, big as that side of the room. There's $80,000 worth of meat in it. Sometimes it can go bad after 30, 40 days. The patent was when I put this salt in the walls, the salt preserves the meat, so we can age for a year. Doesn't go bad. Not only that, the salt permeates the interior of the meat. Came about by working on a different experiment, but it did come about. And that's how it happened. So I'll run into this quickly. You see, you had another piece of tuna here that was a bit of a byproduct. Right? And then I can go down the line like this. Now the salt is very salty, obviously. So if you want to do a sashimi dish, you put it on the salt this way. I made a little bit of a dressing with tomatoes and chili oil. And here's another dish. And it's very impressive, but you have to eat it fast because it gets salty. So you need to put the chives underneath or some cucumbers so that the fish doesn't pick up so much salt. But you can do that hot or cold. The star there is the salt, of course, the fish. But again, that fish came from here. Hard to get that something like this to look that pretty, right? But there is ways to take the byproduct, spend some energy on creating something out of nothing than just buying foie gras truffles and the fancier stuff and trying to, redress them. So I've always take the challenge of taking something that gets thrown away and turning it into something. So now I got more olive oil here. Next plate, I'm working on a salmon. I'm just going to sear it. This is the one with the ginger, right? Ginger crush. Just let it sit. Don't move it around. That's got the ginger puree. I forget what that goes with, but I'm going to wait. I got to find my recipe. Salmon, lotus chips. Okay, well, we're going to get that cooked first. So that way you just see that. The next was I want to teach you this, and this is something that's important. Because, again, not to say I make all my dishes out of scraps, but this is a good one. This is, anybody know? Peelings of asparagus. And we're going to make a beautiful sauce. While that salmon's cooking, I'm going to put some, there's two ingredients to this. Most of this goes in the garbage. This is carrot peelings. It's asparagus peelings, right? It's going to go in a pan. That's it. I'll put it all in. And if you looked in the kitchens in New York City, the amount that goes in the garbage is crazy. I'm just going to put this right here to cover it. This has got a nice crust on it. That's the ginger crust. I do need a spatula if we have one. Anybody know where the spatula would be? Actually, I'm okay. Let that set. So I cooked it on the one side. I'm going to let it sit. Oh, you got one. Thank you. So this is a beautiful salmon steak. And look at the crust. Just ginger black pepper crust. So I'm just going to keep this right here, let it cook slowly while we get to the other stuff. So risotto, I don't have time to make, but I'm going to tell you how to make it. Well, I'll tell you, we did make it, and it's here. I'll get a small amount over here for us. Risotto is another thing that came and went, but it's a really good vehicle to serve if it isn't served in an Italian restaurant. The good risottos in an Italian restaurant are very loose. They're made to order. Very hard to do that in the busy restaurant. So I have the rice pre-blanched a little bit. The most important thing for you right now is to get, I'm going to put a little bit of water in with the asparagus peels. I mean, when I say little, I'm talking about a little, like an ounce. See that? 2 ounces. So that is water and asparagus peels. Risotto, I got going. Little chicken stock. A little butter. And this salmon is cooking beautifully because you sear it on one side, let it go slow. Meantime, I'm going to drop some soba noodles. Moving on to another tuna dish. Soba noodles are buckwheat noodles into the water. You can see now. Can you see that? That's asparagus and water. All I'm going to do now is put some. Now, you know how to make beurre blanc. They teach you all that. Add a piece and a piece. You're going to throw butter in, right? We're going to throw some spinach in. And we're going to, here's the risotto. And all we're going to do is stir. Now, the reason I love this is you're getting this starch inside the peelings of asparagus have a little bit of starch. And they'll hold that butter together. The spinach is there for flavor and mostly color. There's no vinegar. There's no shallots. There's no white wine. There's no acid that is there to coagulate the protein of the butter. It's just butter. And I just melt it. Look at that. See that? It's butter and asparagus. I'm just going to leave it here. Risotto here, salmon here. A couple of asparaguses. We'll make a plate. Risotto, normally you put cheese in. Because it's with fish, we're not going to do it this time. I'm just going to put this here. Oh. Throw a couple of cherry tomatoes in there. See the sauce? There we go. How fast was that? It was about 4 minutes. We use peelings, a little spinach, some butter, I lost my knife. Oh. Again, we didn't put cheese in the risotto. There's some herbs and some tomato. Also, when you plate food, I don't know if they teach you this in school. Some do, some don't. There's also the clock method, right? Anybody aware of that? This is at 12 o'clock. This is at 2 o'clock. Does anyone know that? So when we're in a restaurant, if I look at this as a cook, 6 o'clock. This is 12 o'clock. What is the most important part? Where should the first bite be? What time? 12's away from the customer. So 6, right? Most important bite, 7 o'clock. Your fork's here, knife's here. So when the best part, like where the asparagus tip should be, or the best piece of the meat, the bone should never be at 7, because you're sitting here, your fork is here, your knife is here. You're gonna go right there. You're not gonna go over. So when you plate, that's what you got to keep in mind. See, so at 7 o'clock, I'm getting an asparagus tip or the biggest piece of the salmon. Now, the asparagus butter is delicious, needs seasoning, but it also needs a little bit of acid or some perfume. The acid will turn color, but boy, is that good. Now look at this. Look at the best part. Look at the texture. What? And there's no light and silky. One of my favorites. And almost forgot. These babies are called lotus root chips. Goes well with the ginger. So lotus root, that's what it looks like. Looks like a potato, right? I was representing the United States in 1988 in Tokyo. I got a mystery basket. They gave me this. I looked at it. I said, potato chips. I made these. I was on the news in Tokyo, all over Japan, because that was the American mentality, to take something and fry it into a chip. And that's where the lotus chip came from. You don't see it, but in the 80s, you saw them in a lot of restaurants, 80s and 90s, because it's a good garnish. It still is a good garnish, but most of the Asian culture uses this for soups, pickling, stews. This is more of a vegetable, like a carrot. You wouldn't make carrot chips to them, but that was a great garnish, and it was a big deal. Back in the old days, there was no Instagram. So you had to have really good-looking food that was Instagram worthy to get into magazines. And your peers had to think that your food was good. And then the critics would come. So you didn't get to promote yourself. So now my soba noodles are here. We're moving along. I hope I'm not going too fast. You can always ask questions. Soba noodles are cooked. I'm gonna chill them down a little. Do you have, Chris, do you have any soba noodles made? You have any soba noodles cold? Okay, soba noodles. And this is tahini. Anybody know what tahini is? What is it? Sesame paste. So that goes in with the soba noodles. And now the tahini's going to bind it. It's almost like peanut butter and spaghetti, right? We got this nice, we're making it sticky. Salt, pepper. Some herbs. And we're going to roll. Do you have any soba noodle made, Chris? Another great garnish. I add some soy sauce. And then we have a nori sheet. So this is a soba noodle roll. Put it right in. And you can add some veggies. Okay, so this is what we're getting at. This is a soba noodle roll, but this one's coming quite along. So you just take it and roll it. So it's got sesame paste, a little bit of chili, put whatever you want in it, really. But when we were years ago, when we had this on the menu, we couldn't really make rice in the restaurant. We didn't have sushi chefs in our restaurant, but we wanted something Asian like this that we could make a day ahead to get ahead. So we came up with this, and it's great. So you see the idea? Now you chill this. The tahini gets, the noodles and the tahini bind, and you've got a great hors d'oeuvre. I'll show you that in a moment. And the next dish is going to be a tuna steak, and then we'll move to a quick dessert. Tuna steak, just like the salmon. You see, you're going to take the best piece of the tuna. This is the prize cut, right? Let's say, for example, we look at that. You could cut it this way and have a nice steak, or you can cut it this way. Take the black meat off. Cut it down a little bit, and you got a rectangle, right? Take another one. Square it off. Again, all these pieces go into the tartare, right? So we're going to make another dish with this one. So this, we talk about breading. Who likes chicken parm? Why? Huh? Tastes good. Anybody know why it's terrible? Well, here's what happens, right? They tell you to get it nice and crispy, right? Right? Bread it. Use really dry bread, right? Like Italian breadcrumbs. And then you fry it, get it nice and crispy. Then what do? Huh? You put sauce to make it soggy. Cheese to make it soggy, right? So you have all that time to get it crispy, and then you get it soggy. So we're going to do something a little different. Let me get a pan down. So if you're going to bread something, there's a couple things you can do. I always put mustard, not mustard, but I always flavor the eggs, right? Because the eggs are the carrier. So otherwise, you could add tomato paste, mushroom soup, soy sauce, ginger, miso, anything to your egg and make your product taste a little better. But we're going to do, first thing I'm going to do, we're having my nori. So more flavor, right? So here's a piece of tuna, right? We're going to season that salt, pepper. Right? We're going to put it in here. Right, we're just going to wrap it like this. I'm going to cut off the sides of it. Right. So there we go, right? Now we got the egg. We're going to flour it first. Egg it. Bread it. Japanese breadcrumbs. Who likes them? Why? So Japanese breadcrumbs came out in the late 80s. Think about Japanese breadcrumbs. How many people have eaten in a Japanese restaurant and got served bread? Where are they getting all the breadcrumbs? Where's the Japanese people getting all the breadcrumbs? They don't serve bread. Think about it, right? French bread, Italian bread. So genius idea is that they developed a breadcrumb that would help with a texture similar to tempura. Right? I mean, they didn't make breadcrumbs because they had extra bread. They made it for texture. It's a larger crumb. In fact, the way they make it, there's no crust. They steam bread in big vats, and it's all crumb. But genius. Okay, so now I have a breaded chicken cutlet, right? It's a tuna steak, right? So I'm going to saute this now, but I have mustard on the inside. So I got more flavor, and I got seaweed on the inside, more flavor. I got a pan down. But I want to stuff it now because now I'm a show off, and I want to charge more money. How do you get more money for something? You make it look better, right? You make it sound better. You make it more exciting. So I'm going to take a little this or this. I'm going to go right to the side or this. Now I got a asparagus stuffed tuna steak. Unusual, right? We're down here, a little bit of, and it's got mustard and seaweed flavor. And I have my soba noodle roll, right? That was made earlier. Or the one I just made today, right here. Mine's actually better than Chris's. Chris made this today. You get the general idea. And now the bread. When you do cook with bread, use good olive oil. Good oil, whatever you're cooking it, because the bread's going to absorb that. You're going to eat it. When you sear a salmon like I did, you don't eat that oil unless you're making a pan sauce. So if you're going to be eating it, put the butter in, use good olive oil, because you're going to be eating that flavor from the bread. So don't use, and try not to deep fry proteins like chicken parm. Because the deep fryer, it's good for French fries. It's good for calamari. It's good for shoestrings, but it's not necessarily good for the other stuff so much. Okay. Nice and crispy. In fact, the mustard is great. You can smell it. little spinach. So now when you cut through this, now you've got an imprint. And this is tomato miso sauce. Now we use it in several dishes. But you see this beautiful inlay. This could be done with different proteins as well. It's chili oil. So that's a asparagus stuffed tuna wrapped in seaweed. Soba noodle nori roll. Now that's the prime piece. The tartare and the sashimi are secondary. The salmon is the prime piece. You could do the same thing with the salmon there, and then the belly and the tartare are the secondary piece. And that's, one of the things I try to get across is your utilization of everything that you're bringing in, whether it's mushroom stems, shrimp peels, all that stuff. You need to learn how to utilize those. And some of the creations of the byproducts are better than the original product. At least for me, that is. We have time for a quick dessert. Okay. Let me get going. I was traveling in Denmark when I was 21. And I was reading menus, and I read on this menu, it said strawberries, at least I thought I read it, strawberries with pepper and balsamic. And back in my day of taking notes, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, but I thought it was bell pepper. And it wasn't. It was black pepper and balsamic, which is a basic, I think it's an Italian style thing. But anyway, I made this anyway. It's in my book. I love it. It's bell peppers, caramel. So what happens is you cook these peppers down like you would cook orange peel in a marmalade, like a confiture. And I'm telling you, if you want to surprise your guests, make it. And you can cook this, especially if they're in season. And this, I got some apple juice, some sugar, some caramel, a little bit of liquor. But you'll get the idea. We won't have time to cook it all the way today, but I have one made. I think I have one made. Yeah, here. My favorite, because if you taste it, and you should taste it, it comes in your nose, and you know what it is, but you don't know what it is because you don't associate vegetables in your dessert. It's the same as putting curry. I had a dessert on the menu in 2004, won Best Dessert in New York City, New York Magazine. It was a panna cotta with curry jelly, and the jelly was we replaced cinnamon with curry. Man, and we do that a lot. Chris! What happened to Chris? What happened to my chef? You got to meet Chris. So we normally make a tart. I'll show you. It's an old book, too. This is the tart. This is the tart. And let me show you the tart de parfait we made earlier. All right. And I got, anybody know what a petit four is? Know what a petit four is? What is it? Petit four? Okay, there's many petit fours, right? Do you know what a petit four means? What is it? Little oven. You see that little oven? That's got petit fours on a little oven. So petit fours are usually cookies or snacks at the end of the meal. But in the translation, it means little oven. So when I was in pastry school, I was always trying to translate things like what was centigrade versus Fahrenheit, and what is, if you think about like soul bon femme, we know what that is? Soul, it means soul good it means soul, it means housewife's soul. Now, if you put that on a menu here, wouldn't sell well, right? Right? Or soul meunier means the miller's soul. So the French have a way of having words that sound good to us, but it wouldn't translate here. But when you start learning, we're like, well, why did I created Angry Lobster, or at least made it very popular. Right? Angry, at least, is an expression of heat, right? It's probably spicy. So it describes it a little more. I mean, soul meunier means it has flour. Came from the miller. I guess it means it's floured. It's almost like breaded. But anyway, are we going to hand them out? Hand them out. So I went to pastry school. I created the cake pop in 1993. Along came Starbucks about a decade later. But the first cake pop was made of smoked salmon, goat cheese, and foie gras. And they were called gourmet pops. And then we went to the sweet ones. And I still make them. I own a bakery down in Jersey. We make cake pops, and you'll get to taste them now. But we're going to make, so normally the tart with the peppers we make, but because I don't have the right tart shells, I'm just going to make a sundae. So we got ice cream. What are you doing, samples? Yeah. Oh, yeah, good. I need ice cream. Time flies. Any questions about any of the dishes? So the bell pepper caramel, you see it's getting, it'll soften up. I got a cooked one here. Beautiful. We're going to make a little sundae. Pardon me? Best selling dish? Well, it depends on the restaurant, but that's a good question. Normally it's beef. Well, we have a lobster appetizer called lobster dumpling. And our bacon, we do the bacon on the clothesline. That's a creation of mine. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's a number one. Lobster dumplings are number one. Tuna tartare sells. Salads always sell well. If you make a good salad, it sells well. But normally the best-selling dish is beef. Yeah, chicken was up there years ago, but not anymore. Beef. Salmon's a good seller also. So do you see what's happening with the caramel? What do you guys eat? Tuna? Here you are. How you doing? Okay, so now I have the berries here. I have whipped cream. I have ice cream. I have a tart shell. And I have a beautiful caramel. And you can see this one's almost done, but I'll leave this caramel up front for you to taste. But the caramel goes over the top. Pardon me? Whipped cream. Ice cream underneath, whipped cream. Normally we make a tart. We made it Sunday. Still fantastic. I think it's important to end up with a good dessert. Some restaurants, a lot of chefs don't understand dessert. They don't make them. I don't know why. But I think that the food in a restaurant should match the pastry. And it should go. I'm going to leave this over here. Feel free to taste that caramel. I have some plastic spoons here. And I think we did the dishes we were going to do. So I hope you learned something. Thank you for coming. Any questions? You like what you're eating? How's the cake pop? So Starbucks robbed me. I trademarked it. I'm opening a coffee shop called Burke's. But anyway, be creative. You know, you guys got to try stuff. There's a lot of different avenues when you get out of school. But, you know, try to ask yourself the question, why do we do this? Like the chicken parm. Like, why do we make it crispy only to make it soggy? That's just one example of, but it still doesn't mean it's not good. People like it for what it is, right? But in order to improve on something, got to understand why it's good or why it's not good. And also the idea of how things came about. You know, before great transportation and aviation, all that, you know, people made seasonal food in the region they came from. So they didn't have a choice. You know, they put mint with the lamb, mustard with the lamb. That's what they had. Right? Doesn't mean you have to do that. Right? Tradition is something Americans and the USA is not that big on. But the Europeans and the other cultures that have been around a long time, that's because they lived off the terroir, the soil, the seasons, and sometimes there's religious reasons, right? There's dietary reasons, health reasons, things like that. The fads come and go. And we learn a little bit of something from each thing that comes and goes. I mean, nouvelle cuisine, all types of different things. We take a little piece that usually stays, and it goes back to the fundamentals of what solid cooking is. It's got to taste good. It's got to look good. It's got to feel good. What? Hotel partnerships? Well, I'm going to a hotel tonight in the Garden City Hotel right after this. I have to do a dinner in the dark. So I host a blindfolded dinner for 30 people. And they have to guess the wines and the food. Well, hotel partnerships are great because I can go in and teach what I do. And they run their hotels. And it's an added bonus for them to be associated with me. It's also great economically for me and also good for my brand. So you got to be able to, but the hotel has to be able to produce your food. So whenever you get to a certain level, the brand, which I am, the brand has to be protected because the person you have to have the right to change menus, help out. So I always think they're pretty good, you know. Well, communication, same page, showing up, doing your work, brainstorming ideas, fixing problems, you know, basic relationship stuff. It's a relationship, you know. Yes. Potato chips? You know what a mandolin is? You make it go fret on the mandolin. Then I buy these long pipes, like copper pipes. I wrap them in foil really tight, and I put them in the oven. I lay them right on a pipe. Right? You could do them in a bread thing probably too. You know? but they're not deep enough. But those are great. A lot of they take a lot of work. These things, you know, you have to have specialty people. Like, you know, the herb potato chip. I created that making pump soufflés at the River Cafe. Because I used to make pump soufflés. My internship in Texas, I made pump soufflés. Anyone know what that is? They're little puffed potatoes. Nightmare to make. Right? 40% work, 60% don't, if you're good. And I made them, and that's what they give the extern to do. You know, to make you insane. And I made them, and I got good at them. Once you're good at them, and then the ones that weren't puffing. Here's again another way to use the dead ones. Like the ones that didn't puff, I'm like, let's put an herb in them, flatten them out, and bake them. And that's how we came up with that. Great garnish. A lot of these things faded, you know. Some of it because there's so much labor involved in some of these little things that you do. Labor went way up through the years. Not to say people shouldn't get paid well; they should. And food cost is way up. So the restaurant business is harder and harder to make money, and you got to be busy all the time. So it's important to learn more than just a special. If you're studying pastry, learn something about food. If you want to be a chef, learn about pastry. You know, because if I hire a chef and he doesn't do pastry, that means I got to hire a pastry chef. I can't pay him as much or her as much as I'd like to. So if you can say I can handle pastry, all I need is a pastry sous chef, all of a sudden you're more valuable. And I don't understand why chefs don't think that they have to know pastry. It's just crazy. Does anybody feel the same thing? It's like it's not two different schools. Yes, it is, but no, it isn't. You know, so, and why not know? I think pastry is a lot of fun. And if you're a signature chef and you have a signature style, the pastry should match the food in design and style and whimsy or in seriousness, whatever the style may be. So, what's up? I can't hear. Just speak up. I'll hear you. When I'm preparing what? I didn't hear the last part. Private events? Oh, okay. Well, first thing is how many people are going to be helping me? What kind of kitchen they have? It's a private event in a home, you mean? It's going to be the space you have to work with, what the demands are, what they want, how many people are going to be working with me, and the timing of it. You know, again, it's a communication thing. You want really fancy, you want what the budget is, and the more questions you ask, the better, right? And also, if you're going to do that, you're going to cover the economics of it. Who pays for transportation? Who pays for labor? Who pays for cleanup? Right? All these things, because it's a lot of work. You know, the food alone is only one part of it. Then you got to get the food there. You got to prep some of it before you get there, and then you got to clean. I can't leave somebody. I used to be a chef in a mansion in Norway. I was the only chef. I worked in another mansion up in New York State when I was very young. When you work in a house and you're the only chef, you have to do everything yourself. The beauty of it is you're responsible for everything. There's no blame in the saucier. There's no blame in the sous chef. It's like wrestling. Anybody ever wrestle? You go out on a mat. It's you against one guy. You don't blame it. You lose, you lose. That's the mental discipline about being a chef. When I have 20 guys in the kitchen, I can't be responsible for every person's mistakes, but I am. That's why they say chefs are little nuts. You know, you watch these TV shows, they think all the chefs are crazy. We're a little crazy because there's a lot of responsibility. Think about coaching. Some coaches yell, some coaches don't. But the coaches don't yell because they hate the players. They yell because they're disappointed in the outcome. And there's a mix up there. And some chefs are a little bit too much. I get it. But, you know, you want to win, right? If you're an athlete, you play 6 months a year, maybe you get 6 months off. You're a chef, you play 12 months a year. And the grind is incredible because there's no time off. And the better you get at your job, the more you work. It's crazy. So you got to be able to balance it out somehow with, you know, what the capabilities of your staff are and what your expectation is. And if you really are a type of person that pushes and you expect to see this come out every time beautiful and it's busy, it's not easy. And then when it's not right, and you know how much work I put into it, or my sous chef, into saying, here's what we want, and then it falls apart, there's frustration. It's not disrespect, and it's not anger, it's frustration. And everybody's different. There's crossing the line too. So everyone's got to be respected, but there's a teaching process. Some people just don't want to learn, and some people rise. Some people do a better job because they understand the passion that goes into making something. But the more you understand with your staff why you do something, and why it's supposed to be, why the sauce should be thinner, or why it should be thicker, or why you don't need this much on top, and you gotta give them the whys. Yes, sir. What's my what? What's my why? My why is why not. My why is why not. Always why not. Why can't I do that? Right? It's what my other why is what if? What if we did it differently? So it's a great question. My why is why not. Why can't we do it this way? But you can only do a why not if you know why. You can't, if I'm an architect and I understand how to build a square building, I understand the whys. Got to have a foundation, it's got to have beams. But if I understand that, then I can do why not. Then I can do why maybe I can build it with 2 beams and go sideways. But if you don't know the why, you can't do the why not. So that's a great question. So learn the why. And then the what if is imagination. What if we did it this way? What if is very powerful. There's a poem out there called What If you can find it. It's very powerful, those 2 words. Because what if means what if. And what if is like dare me. And that has a lot to do with creativity and what you can and can't do. And the beauty of what you're going to go out and do is there is a lot of why and why not and a lot of what if out there. Because the rules are not set in stone. The fundamentals are. If you don't learn the fundamentals, you're screwed. So learn the fundamentals. Don't be in a rush to be a chef. Don't be in a rush to be famous on Instagram. Go win the cupcake war, but understand that it's a cupcake war and you're not a celebrity chef, right? You got to learn all the fundamentals, including pastry, including everything else that you can, because it'll make you stronger. Don't be in a rush to be a chef at 24. And the other thing, work for the best people you can if you can afford to. Sometimes you can't afford to work for the best because they pay the least. But if you can, go work for the schooling here is important, super important. But the schooling is going to begin when you get your first job. It's going to continue. So you have some fundamentals here. And the best thing about today is ask questions. Because what I cook is not necessarily by the book. You saw what we did. I tried to show you how to make things out of nothing, out of what goes in the garbage. My favorite thing is asparagus butter because I laugh at it. Because most people throw it away. And when I teach guys like Chris, who's a great chef, by the way, when he learns how to make something out of nothing, that's a joy to us. Because we can all get a piece of tuna and make sashimi or buy a piece of Wagyu beef and put truffle butter on it, right? That's not creativity. It's delicious. But when you go in and you eat something no one ever saw before, you took the neck of a swordfish and became famous for using it. I'll give you an example. Pork shank, 1996 wins. Well, I created a pork shank dish. It was I was opening a steakhouse with the Smith-Walensky guys. Steakhouse veterans. I'm in Munich. I'm in a Bavarian Hofbrau house, and they make this big pork on a spit. The leg, the shank. It's called Weinhaxen. It's the hock. And I eat it, and I can't believe how good it is. And there's 100 people, 200 people in this big place eating it. And they eat it in different cultures. They eat pork. Everybody eats pork. So I went back, and I made it like a French method. I made it like duck confit, cooked in its own fat, cured it for 3 days, blah, blah, blah. So when I presented my menu for the new steakhouse that was open for 30 years, the board of directors and all the steakhouse guys and my partners were like, yeah, we like this. We love this. We don't like the pork. Never going to sell. And I was fuming because I had a knife in it. Had the applesauce made with jalapenos because pork and applesauce is a safe bet for an American. But the jalapenos were trending in the 90s. Now they don't trend anymore. They dominate, right? So Alan Stillman, the CEO, says, David's upset. He says, let him put it on the menu. And he says, if it doesn't sell in 6 weeks, can we take it off? And I'm like, absolutely. And it wins best dish in America. After 4 weeks, it wins best dish in America. It was on the menu for 30 years. That's the why not, right? That's the why not part. right? Because once you're doing this for a while, you'll understand what people want. And that's what I do. I understand what you want to eat. Maybe not you, because I understand what my customer wants to eat. And I understand what they don't want to eat. They don't want to eat pig's ears, right? You know, a food writer might write, oh, they had pig's ears here and they had this and that. I mean, you guys are younger, but have you ever woken up with your lover and said, honey, we're going out for pig ear tonight? No, very, very few people, right? Pizza, yes. Pasta, steak, sushi, I got it. Pig's ears, if pig's ears were going to be a hit, there'd be a pig ear drive-thru. And I don't see it happen. So stick to learn what you can, be strong with the fundamentals, then do the why nots, do the what ifs, and then you'll see how it comes. Thank you for coming. And taste the pepper caramel. Chris, thank you. Thank you, guys. Happy to see you. Yeah.
I guess I wanted to know, you've already built such an amazing legacy in New York City, and you've got so many fun facts and a whole history that people will learn about through this one. And I guess out of all of that you've accomplished, that you've done, what is the most important thing to you that you want people to remember you by, you know, in 100 years?
Well, I think that one of the most important things for me is, and I got a phone call this morning from an old chef, Burke. You know, when you work with guys and girls in the kitchen, it gets very intense sometimes. You know, like you're in a small kitchen, and there's like, you know, when someone calls you a couple years later and says, I got to thank you, I just got a good job, and if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have had it. Or if you didn't teach me this, I'd be screwed. Or I just want to call you and say, I got a 3-star review from the Phoenix Sun today. And I, you know what? I still cook your dishes. So those are the things that being the teacher or the mentor is important, because you don't realize it. And most people don't have the time to stop back and say thank you. So those types of things are being a good teacher and a good educator and teaching people how to work. I mean, you know, teaching someone how to make a dish is one thing, but teaching someone that it's possible to do something nobody else did, or that they can accomplish that, is important. So, you know, that would be something you want to be known for. You know, I'm writing a book now, and we've interviewed 100 chefs, almost 100 chefs that I worked for throughout my career, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we talk about all the stuff that's happened in this. You know, people think being chefs is a crazy career. You look at The Bear and some of these shows that are on TV. You know, there's a lot of drama in our business. There's a lot of issues in our business that, you know, there's a lot of roadblocks that, you know, you got to get through. You know, it's like no other business. It's like no other business, but it's a great business. If you want to work hard, stay focused and learn, it's fun. Never the same day twice, right? What do you call that show? The guy wakes up, there's no Groundhog Day in the restaurant business. So, anything else? Thank you.
Any other questions for Chef, or one more question?
I didn't hear. Huh? What's the best event? What?
Best event to attend to gain more networking?
You should go to the restaurant show. It's at Javits. Is a good thing to open your eyes. The events I go to, sometimes I speak at the Research Chefs Association. If anyone's interested in food science, they should join that club. RCA, it's called. It combines, it's called culinary technique, with the people that are in the laboratories making our snack foods and our flavored liquors and Lipton and Campbell's, and those are great jobs. You know, networking is networking. Networking is communication. You know, volunteering. If you want to go work in a good restaurant, they can't hire you, volunteer. Sometimes the chef will say, you know what, I like the feel of this person. You know, they come in, they want to learn. It's good, right? How did we met? We met. Right?
We met a couple years back. Before I was in culinary, I was in property management, and I worked in the management office of the building we used to live in. So,
And she goes, I look familiar. I'm like, yeah. That's network. Networking's easy. Networking's not easy, but it's everyday stuff. being polite, say hello to people. You never know who you're talking to. You know, I'm going to tell you a story because when I was at the CIA in 1980, to my last class, I had this guy named, I had a chef, Mean Man. Like, that's when you could hit kids back then. And this guy was not attractive, big guy, you know. He was not attractive. I'll just say it like that. And I can still smell his breath yelling at me from 1982. I came in. I was a really good student. I knew how to cut meat and fish. And he did a demonstration with a knife, like I did that salmon, one swoop like that, and he boned it out. Two things like this. And he goes, who's going to do the fish? Nobody raised their hand. And he said, and then I finally raised my hand. And I said, I'll do it. And he goes, you're going to do it like I did, right? I'm like, yep. And there's no way in hell. I probably didn't have the strength to do it like he did because he's a big guy, tall. And I didn't do it the way he did. He came over and he screamed at me like Jack Nicholson in that movie with, you know, like in my face, like screaming. Another chef from across the hall came in and told me to calm down. So that was day one, 15-day class. I went in, I kept working. And at the end of the class, I got a good grade. But I thought the guy hated me. Then we're at the job fair. And this guy comes to me and he goes, listen, he goes, we have a job opportunity in Norway, go to Europe. And I was looking at jobs in Texas and this and that and the other thing. I said, in Europe? He goes, yeah. He goes, one of the instructors said you were the best student he ever had. I said, really? I said, who? And he goes, he did. And it was the same guy in the corner over there looking at me, and he was like, and still barking. And I had goosebumps, and that was Roland Hennon, and he was one of the best teachers ever because he saw something in me that he knew was better, and he wanted, you know, he was hard on me because he wanted me to be good. And sometimes people in the kitchens, and Chris will know this, if I'm yelling in the kitchen, I don't yell at someone that gave up because I'm wasting my time. I only pay attention to people who are good. So if it, like David's like, oh shit, Burke's riding me today. He goes, if he's riding you, he likes you. If he's not riding you, he ain't talking to you. That's a problem, right? That's a problem because you start to say, why should I spend my energy training someone that doesn't want to? It isn't absorbing it sometimes. So networking it can be anything, you know, and you got to be, you know, just people see what you're doing. You walk in the kitchen and I pick up the paper on the ground, or one of my cooks says, I noticed that. I noticed someone today bringing my garbage in from my street, bringing my empty pails in today, and I was like, you know, you don't think of that stuff, right? That person doesn't even work for me. It's just someone that was coming in to meet me for an interview in my home office, and that's a good first sign, right? They're not stepping on a banana peel. They're picking it up, and some people just don't see that. Because, you know, they don't have to be told what to do. That's my point. So networking is staying in touch. And I'm not that good at it. Staying in touch and being respectful. Now with the internet, you got a lot of things you can connect with. Don't burn bridges because that comes back. You know, there's a lot of that now. People quit without notice. They think they can just go down the street and get another job. Yes, until it doesn't look that easy one day. The industry gets a little small at a certain level, and the last thing you want is one bad reference can cost you the job. But if you're learning and you got to listen, this is hospitality. We're supposed to be nice, right? Hospital means nurturing. Hospitality is the same thing, right? You're supposed to be giving and nurturing people. You're not supposed to be hitting them with wooden spoons, right? But you know that we forget that. We think it's a business. It's a business, but it's also a giving business before you get. In this business, you got to give before you get. You got to work the hours. You got to learn. You got to sacrifice, and then hopefully that pays off and you get. But it's not just going to come to you showing up because you got a degree and you worked in a good place if you don't put in the extra time. You know, when we work 60 hours a week. And people often say, well, in my first job, I think I was like 30. I had a big job. And the guy was like, oh, so you make a lot of money for a young guy. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're 30 years old. I said, well, yeah, I got 20 years experience. I said, if I work 60 hours a week, that's time and a half. For 10 years, that's 15 years. Think about it. I said, your accountant works 35 hours, I work 70. So I get twice as much experience. And you know, he looked at me and he goes, I can't argue with that. You can't. So when people, you know, see a young chef who's doing well, he put the time in. So if you're going to give you the hours, take them. You know, take the hours and learn, but do it while your legs are strong and you're young. And then you can decide. Then then you can take your pick of jobs. But the most important thing is do what you like to do. If you don't get joy out of it, it's going to be a terrible journey. So find a spot that's good for you, that works for you, that you're comfortable working at, and hopefully you learn. If you're not learning on a daily basis, then you're not going to grow. You can teach yourself stuff too, only if you ask why. Why not, what if? And that's what the curious mind does for me. I'm a curious mind. So I'm always thinking about, changing things. Yeah, anybody go home and change the furniture around for no reason sometimes because they're bored? That's what I do. And my assistant's like, what the hell happened here? Because, it just, you want to try something. So that's it. All right. I got to go teach now.
Oh, you gotta pick a raffle winner's. So, look, thank you for joining us. And I think this is a record for how many dishes someone has demoed.
This is a half a day.
Originally, when we were talking, I think he wanted to do 11 dishes. And
Well,
said,
I didn't
no, we only have 2 hours. So.
I didn't do every dish in detail, but I don't need to go into detail. You're already students. This is more about seeing a style and a utilization of what you can do with one particular item.
Yeah, no, he did a great job of showing that's all part of sustainability and just using everything. So on that note, Chef, pick out two. We have 2 little 10-inch honing steels. They're nice and cute and portable.
188. 195. Those are the last 3 numbers.
188, 195. Woo! No 188, 195? There you go. Do it. 195? Woohoo! All right. So if anybody wants to come up and meet Chef, say hi, take a picture, we can do that now. And then we'll chit chat. Wow, that's crazy.
We have